Hi, everybody. Sid Walker here. Welcome to the webinar. I see people getting online here as we're getting going here. I've got about 1 minute early, so I just want to make sure everything's working here. Somebody can ask me a quick question. Tell me, say hello, or say you can hear me. That'd be wonderful. And I know one time I muted myself. There we go. Thanks, Doug. I muted myself for about 5 minutes before anybody told me that they couldn't hear anything. So, all right, so it looks like everything's working. All right, here we go. So welcome, everybody. This is Sid Walker. This is a preview webinar for my sales and coaching program for relationship-oriented financial advisors or consultants, anyone selling a service. I've always been focused on intangible sales. I've done a little bit of intangible sales coaching, but mostly intangible, where you're selling a piece of paper basically, or promise to pay money or whatever, is a big example of intangible. In my program, you can see there, Selling Without Wrestling. That's a name I came up with years ago. How to have a 90% closing ratio and an abundance of quality referrals without being pushy or controlling. And I guess I'll say one other thing, because I know people come and go on these things. That website is currently free. I made it. It used to be $40 a month. I made it free. I know a lot of you have signed up for it, but I basically decided just to put it out there, make it more available. I am asking for donations if you get value from it, and I've had some of those, so appreciate that. And but anyway, you can't beat the price at this point. And there's over 90 hours of audio, and it's downloadable on that site. So it's sellingwithoutwrestling.com, and then I'll show you in a little while here where to click. There's a couple different spots. You click on any place where it says free. There's one in the upper left-hand corner, and then there's a box kind of over on the right. If you click on that, then it takes you to an opt-in page, and just sign up, and you're in. All right. Title today, Surefire Low-Key Techniques for Closing More Fourth Quarter Business. This is that time of year for a lot of people. This is their biggest quarter. So we want to do everything we can to make that happen here. All right, hang on, let me see if I can change slides. All right, there we go. Looks like that's working. So how to get the most out of this webinar? Keep an open mind. I'm a little different than a lot of people. I've been doing this for 38 years. I'm a personal growth junkie. I'm, very much a pioneer. I've gotten to leadership level in all kinds of different programs, and including 10 years as a lay monk in a monastery in Long Beach, run by women. How's that? So anyway, it's been a fun learning process, and I'll tell you more. I've got a new book out just a couple weeks ago called Living in the Zone. Very proud of that. Very, very advanced, cutting edge book. And excited to share that with everybody. I've just had amazing breakthroughs in the last couple of years, and I'll share some of that with you in terms of getting any kind of barrier out of the way. So keep an open mind. I've got a proven knack for helping some of the most gentle, soft-spoken people become highly successful. You don't have to be pushy and controlling to be a huge success in sales. That's often a misunderstanding, I think. I've created some of the biggest producers in the financial services business, not because I'm a financial genius, but I'm really good at the psychology stuff. And now, I've helped a number of people double their incomes 4 times at this point, so they're in the millions. And everything I'm talking about is proven. I use it myself. It's tested with thousands of people. I mean, there's nothing I'm going to talk about that's theory. I'm big on practical. Does it work? I used to have Fortune 500 clients in my earlier career, and that was fun. Deep pockets there. You can charge a lot of money for stuff, but I like working with individuals and financial advisors in particular, or a consultant of some kind, just because you know if your coach is any good by a couple of days from now. You don't. In the corporate world, it's a little harder to see what your impact's going to be. So I've always focused more on the smaller group, one-on-one type of coaching, and I've always liked financial advisors because they have total freedom to do anything they want. That's the most fun person to coach. All right, and I'll make you another promise that everything I'm going to talk about today is easier and more fun and will result in more sales than what most of you are currently doing. I think a lot of times I say I spend a great amount of my coaching time talking people out of all the junk they've learned along the way, especially if you're a relationship builder. I'm going to get into that in a minute, because if you care about people, you've got to take a different approach. You can't use traditional sales techniques and feel good about it, basically. All right, purpose. I'm going to share some highlights. I've got 3,000 clients. That's financial services. I've probably got another 1,000 of everybody else you can imagine. I've helped a lot of people make a lot more money, have a lot more fun with this business. I think that's probably, if you're a relationship builder, you care about other people. You've got a relationship with yourself. There's more to making money. Money is obviously important, but how do you feel about yourself? How do your clients feel about you? How effective is your communication with people? How's your stress level? All those things should be good. Because I've always said the financial services business, or anything where you've got a lot of control like that, is really the best job out there. And I've seen a lot of the good ones. I still think that that's one of the best ones in terms of the freedom of, being able to make as much money as you want, choose your clients. It's pretty great. All right. So more fun, more money. That's our focus here. Closing more business for the final quarter. And also, I guess I would say I'm probably as good as anybody out there at this point at getting rid of all barriers. Any barrier that's in your way, any psychological barrier, I've got a solution for that. So I'm having fun with that one. I can do circles around anybody on that one at this point. I've had some just major breakthroughs, and it's all in my book. Let's see, where am I here? Should I show you that? Let me show you real quick here. See if I can find this. Give me 1 second if I. All right, that went there. I'm trying to get to my. Interesting. Give me 1 second here. I'm trying. Not sure why I can't see my. Anyway, I guess I got to move out of this guy. There we go. Okay, now I got it. All right, so here's my website with all my products on it. I'll show you this more at the end. Here's the new book, Living in the Zone. And basically, I'm just showing you that because it's the biggest breakthrough I've had is seeing the power of the ego and how much the ego gets in our way. Most people think the ego is kind of a perception or self-perception of your own self-importance or your own self-worth, which is true, but that's just a tiny little piece of what the ego really is. So I've written a whole book on basically that's been my biggest breakthrough in 38 years of coaching is how do you recognize the ego? How do you basically learn to ignore it and then go with your intuitive instincts? Doesn't mean you don't analyze, but still, we'll talk more about that towards the end in terms of that's really supposed to be more teamwork. All right, and then the website that's free, let's look at that here. That's the pitch page, I call it. So if you go up here, unlimited free trial, click on that. That'll get you to the opt-in page or free access. Just click on those, and that'll take you to that page. And then when you get there, it looks like this. That's where there's a lot on this website. I've been putting stuff on there for over 10 years, and I've got more to put on it. So anyway, that shows you what that looks like. All right, and that was good for me to find out how to do that. So let me go back to this guy. There we go. All right, so logistics, we'll go for 50 minutes. This will be 97% content. I'm not going to do much of a commercial. I'll show you a little bit on my books and do a couple minutes on coaching and ask questions as we go. I'm not going to do a formal Q&A. I'm very available. I'm a little gun shy on the GoToWebinar system here. I haven't done a webinar in a year, so I want to practice that before I actually do it. I used to do teleseminars. That was much easier. I'd have an operator do the questions, but I think I'm going to skip that today. If you've got a question that doesn't get answered somehow, just call me or email me. I will get back to you on that. And I'm around a lot, so just don't hesitate to call me. If you don't hear me for some reason, I'm hearing people are telling me they're hearing me just fine. So if your computer or speakers don't work, just call in on the phone. That's always the best answer for that. All right. So let's see if I can go to the next slide here. Well, always interesting. All right, now I want to go. There we go. All right. So 2 basic approaches to selling. Some of you, I see some familiar names on here that have heard me speak before. So this is kind of one of my classic distinctions, let's call it. But you've got client controllers and you've got relationship builders. And the client controller, that's traditional sales. It's been around forever. It's much more pushy, aggressive. The goal is to make the sale, however you can. And if you don't make the sale, you failed. So we all got trained that way. That's still going on. I mean, in any corporation, most corporations are still teaching some version of that more aggressive style. There's exceptions, but there's still not as many as you think there would be. Relationship builders, whole different ballgame, and I'm the coach for the relationship builders. They're not pushy, they're not aggressive, they're not controlling. They don't like to make people uncomfortable. They don't like conflict. They want to get along. They want to make friends. They don't want to wrestle. That's why my Selling Without Wrestling title. They want to connect, good communication, good exchange of ideas. They want to feel good about themselves, or they want to have the client feel good about you as the advisor and whatever they buy. So, everybody on the line here, I would say, falls in that category. Corporations are giant egos. They're big on control and dominance. They don't really care about people. They care about the bottom line. And so that's the tougher part of that's why the training tends to be more aggressive. And it hasn't really changed much, I don't think, in many years, maybe 100 years. It's technology's advanced a lot. Your average training's much more technical and much more proficient, and companies do a great job on products, but when it comes to sales, that's still kind of a mystery to a corporation. They don't know who's going to make it, so they kind of they hate to put too much money into the sales training aspect of it, which is I'm not complaining. It's given me a job for 38 years. So anyway. So bottom line, corporations, they don't care what you do. They want to make the sales. They want the numbers. And, and basically the direct path to that is you establish a need in the client's mind and you push and close and do whatever you can legally to get them to buy. Now, there's nothing wrong with that unless you're a relationship builder. If you're a relationship builder, none of that stuff's going to work for you. And if you do try to push people, it's usually going to backfire. You're going to feel weird. Your client's going to feel weird. I mean, what I tell people is don't use any sales technique whatsoever. You don't need to. If you're a relationship builder, you can throw away the book of the 35 closes. I've literally created some of the biggest people in the financial services business, and they do not close. Their close is, what do you want to do, Bob and Mary? We've looked at this thing from every angle. That's their close. What do you want to do? And you can have a 90% closing ratio without pushing people. And actually, the traditional closing ratio is 30%. If you shift to being a relationship builder and stop doing sales technique, that's how you get to the 90%. Or at least, and some of you have that now. I've been talking about this a long time. And so you get the idea. The sales culture is always going to say sell, 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 push, push, push. And there's still managers out there that are, just harping on this stuff. Like, I often hear, I'll be working with somebody, especially younger people or career changers. They've got a manager that's traditional sales and they're just pushing, and it can be a disaster. If you're a relationship builder and you go out with a manager or a mentor and they're pushy and you're not, that doesn't work. A lot of times your client's going to say, I like you, but don't bring that guy back. I hear those stories all the time. So it's an honor to be a relationship builder. To me, you're a more evolved person. I call the client controllers knuckle draggers. God bless them. Everybody's got to do the best they can. But if you're a relationship builder, it means you're smarter, you're more tuned into people, you care about people more, and you need a system that fits those values. And most corporations are not going to give you that. All right. So I think we said it, and I'm going to give you another slide here that's similar. Kind of what I'm saying there. The problem is if you got an approach that doesn't fit your values, net result, you're going to operate way below your potential. Your performance is going to suffer. You're going to have confidence issues with self-promotion, prospecting, referrals, developing centers, interviewing, closing. All those things are going to be affected. Because the idea, you want every part of your sales process to feel right to you. You want to be confident about every single little piece. Because that's, I'll talk about that a little later as well, but your intuitive instincts are 10,000 times smarter than your intellect. The approach I've taken for years is learn everything you value and then wing it. In other words, I just find that's still the best because that allows you to connect with people more, allows you to be in the present moment, which is priceless. In other words, if you're in your head trying to do a system, you're never going to be as good as if you're trusting your intuitive instincts and being in the present moment. It's like sports. Everybody, all you guys. I'm not looking at all the names, but I know we got mostly guys, probably maybe a few women. But sports is such a great example. You can't play a sport analytically. It's too slow. The analytical mind I love to call the dumbest, slowest part of the brain, and we're trained to use that for everything. But I'm a good athlete. I love playing the late ice hockey. I finally quit about 28, and I'm a good snow skier, a good tennis player, and I love all that stuff. But man, you can't think. The more you're in the zone, the more you're just tuned into the total present moment without thinking. Just being totally aware of what your body wants to do and what feels right in the moment. And you can do your business that way. I mean, you can be in front of people and be the same way. You're accessing massive amounts of intelligence that your intellect does not have. I could do a whole seminar just on that, but everybody knows that. It's just we tend not to do it. We tend to be more analytical in our approach, and under pressure we get more analytical and slow down and figure things out. And that's okay, but I basically, for my whole career, I've been teaching people to be more intuitive and move away from all that analysis, and it's just way more fun, less energy, and your results are better. So we'll talk about that towards the end. All right. So how to stop the inner conflict. There's 3 paradigm changes I'm going to give you today that are related to closing more business. And, this is kind of some of my basic material. But this is so important, I figured I'd do this today. One is to change your intent. So you're changing your intent away from, now this is if you're a relationship builder, not a client controller. Client controllers are out trying to talk people into things. They have a whole different set of rules. If you're a relationship builder, you basically get out of sales. Your job is to help the client make an educated decision that feels right to him or her, which includes doing nothing. Now, a client controller can never say that. Because they'd be giving you a way out. Client controllers have to do everything they possibly can to get you to say yes. Totally different system. Whereas this was, when you're a relationship builder, you shift it to a decision-making process. Your job is to help people make an educated decision that feels right to them, which includes doing nothing. Now, you don't need to say include doing nothing more than once, maybe twice. People hear it. They hear it, but they pick up on it fast. Because the thing people want most, there it is, talk about what's of interest to them and no sales pressure. And you can have a 90% closing ratio. Wouldn't you rather have that? And just not do all that weird, pushy stuff. Anyway, I don't have to remind you. You all know what that's like. All right. Let me look at my notes here. I guess one other point here is this: if people feel sales pressure, pretty much what happens is that's why you go from 90 down to 30%. 30% of the people are going to buy anyway. That's why you can make a living in the financial services business, because literally 30% of the people are going to buy anyway, or close to it. Maybe it's 25. Where is if you want the 90% closing ratio, this is one of the things you've got to do is you got to shift away from any kind of sales pressure, because when you stop and think about it, if you're pushing anybody and you have a relationship with them, it doesn't feel right. Why would you do that? Your job is to help people. You're treating them like a friend, someone you care about. Help them figure out what they want to do. Your job's not to try to sell somebody something. It's to help them get what they want. So, that's a paradigm shift. And you're going to make more money doing that, because if you're a relationship builder and you're trying to do traditional sales techniques, you're losing people. You're losing people that probably would buy. And then they're going to say, let me think about it, and they're never going to do it. All right, let's try another slide here. Here we go. So demonstrate you're on the client's side. Well, I gave you a couple handouts. I've never done that before. I assume you can see the handouts and download those so you've got them. I could also include them in an email. I would say download them. It's harder for me to email you those with my current system. PDFs are harder to do. So anyway, make a note of that. Let me know if that doesn't work for some reason, but I think you just have the option to download them. There's only 2. But one of them is what I'm about to tell you about here. So it's called the opening language. And basically, again, this is what you say. You're demonstrating to people that you're on their side. You're demonstrating that you're a relationship builder, not a traditional client controller type. And so the language that you use here, and let's think. I'm going to see if I can move out of this a little bit here. Let me try this. I'm going to do escape, and then this guy. Go here. There we go. All right. So this is actually the opening language. I've got a couple things at the top there. Main benefit to the client. You can check that out on your own. But here's the thing. Here's the most important part of the. See if I can do this here. Spotlight. Here we go. Did that work? Spotlight. Yeah, let me try the spotlight one more time. Well, all right. Anyway, I got my cursor on there. So my job is to help you make informed decisions about your finances that feel right to you. This isn't about me trying to talk you into buying a product so you can relax. People physically relax when you say that. Obviously, I've got products for sale, but that's not a requirement for you and I to get to know each other and see if it would be appropriate to work together. That's kind of the neutral one. The one that I prefer is, obviously, I have products for sale, but that's not a requirement for you and I to be friends and, for me to help you. That's in the parentheses here. That's more powerful. And then the other part I like to say is whatever we do needs to feel right to you. And you have my promise. If what we're doing, anything doesn't feel right, we're not doing it, period. So, and then you can say, does that sound like a fair approach? I mean, that changes everything. It moves you out of the sales guy or person into trusted advisor. Now you got to demonstrate. You got to keep demonstrating it. You got to follow it up and live up to what you're saying here. But that's one of the most important things you can say, or some version of that in the beginning of the meeting. What I have seen in many years of coaching and helping people increase their closing ratio, how you set up the relationship with the client in the first meeting pretty much is going to determine your closing ratio. And this is one of the things you got to do, is let people know you're on their side. They're in control. They're in total control. They can say no to anything, and you don't have to fear that. Because the more, bottom line, when people relax and open up, they start looking for stuff to buy. You can't do it any better than that. You can't get it any better than that. Whereas as soon as you start to push or lead or do anything that kind of shuts them down a little bit, you're going to lose 60% of them making seconds. Because they don't trust that. Everybody's intuition is a lot sharper than you think. And here's a couple other. Let's see. Boy, I don't understand what's. My cursor's. I think I'm going to try something else. My cursor is not working the way it usually does, folks, so I apologize. Anyway, here I've got a couple more things. I will take you this approach and put your interest first. I'd like to ask you a couple things in return. And again, remember, you're telling them they're in charge. So one thing you say, I'd like you to return my phone calls and my emails within 48 hours, because there's no reason for them not to. You've taken away the sales pressure. And also, I'd like to ask that whatever we do, you make a decision on those issues. I don't care what the decision is, but let's make this process be about making decisions that feel right to you. Does that sound like a fair approach? So that's the setup. You're trying to establish that you are on their side. You're a relationship builder. And you don't tell them that you're a relationship builder, but you demonstrate it by this language. Here's another way to lead into it. Is to say, I'm bringing different values to the table. I do this business differently than a lot of people. Let me tell you what's important to me, and then go in and do your opening language. All right. So this is a little different for me here. Let me see if I can. I don't know why that's not moving, but let's go back to. To go back to my slides here. Oh, I see. Well, let me see. Give me a second here. I have no idea what that's about. Maybe it didn't. There's my. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can click there. Will that give me back? I've never had. Oh, there we go. This is a little. Something's weird there today, but forgive me. That's not what I wanted. Boy. Well, that's not working. Give me one more second. See if I click up here and go play slideshow. All right. I don't know why that works. All right. Okay, so you got the opening language there, and like I said, download that, and then let's do the second paradigm shift. And this is an interesting one. It's a simple one. I just call it the chemistry and timing formula. I added money to it over the years. It's chemistry, timing, and money. If you're a relationship builder, you really need those three things, because the reality is you're really not closing cases with when the chemistry and timing's not there, or chemistry, timing, and money. And basically what that means is the chemistry means that you like each other. There's an affinity there. The timing means there's a current need for what you're offering, and then the money means they got to have money to buy it. And I usually tell people, don't even call it a case open unless you have those three things. Chemistry is by far the most important. So if you have chemistry, somebody, keep track of those folks, because some of them are going to end up with money, and some of them are no people with money. So they can be a referral source as well. But you want to be collecting people you have chemistry with. And I've had a lot of people in my career tell me, that was one of the greatest days of their lives when they got rid of a big client they just didn't get along with. And that was more typical in the client controller world. I used to do a lot of work on burnout years ago, probably 20 years ago now, but I worked with some huge hitters in Denver. A capital analyst guy, one in particular. He did the work of 4 people, and we became great friends. But he was a crusty, tough character in the beginning. I was kind of scared to death. I was probably 30 years old, and he was probably 50. And one day I got the guts to ask him. I said, "So, well, tell me," because he was burned out. That's why they hired me to help him. And I said, "Do you like your clients?" And he glared at me for a few seconds and then said, "A few of them." So I mean, there's a lot of that going on out there, or there used to be. I mean, there's more relationship builders today, but if you basically limit your practice to people you have chemistry with, it makes you jump out of bed in the morning to go help those folks and go find some more. And your ego, which is really the source of all negativity and all internal criticism, is going to be constantly chattering away and telling you why you can do things and not do things. That's what you've got to learn to ignore. That's what my new book's about. Because most people are listening to their ego, and your ego really isn't that smart. It's basing its information on its past experience, and a lot of what the ego has collected as information is based on misinterpretation. I mean, to me, one of the funniest things is I still make a lot of phone calls because I'm not traveling to speak anymore. And I dialed the phone 800 times last month, which is pretty good. But I mean, I look at a guy's name on the computer, and my ego will start making up a whole story about the guy, And then I get on the phone, and of course, none of that's true. So your ego is it's brilliant at what it does, but its effect is mostly negative. It's mostly talking us out of doing things that feel right or that would work. It's a lot of the conventional wisdom is created by the ego. So anyway, more on that later if we've got time. I just thought I'd plant that seed again because it's related to chemistry and timing. Your ego is going to fight any kind of change. Your ego is going to say, well, yeah, that sounds good, but you can't really make a living if you're just working with people you like. That's not true at all. If you limit your practice to people you have chemistry with, they buy quicker, they buy more, they refer their friends. That doesn't happen with the people that you don't have chemistry with. I've had people tell me that was the biggest change they made in their practice. Big hitters telling me that. Because the other part of it is when the chemistry's not there, everything goes wrong with that account. I'm sure you've all noticed that. So anyway, you get the idea. I mean, you all know that on some level. I'm just reminding you here. All right. So let me see. This has been kind of a wild day here in terms of my slides and all right, that worked. Hot dog. So let's talk about another. This is another key piece. We'll call this paradigm shift number 3. And I wrote a book on this. It's called How to Double Your Sales by Asking a Few More Questions. That's the only book that I don't have on Amazon. It's on Amazon, pardon me, but as a Kindle. If you want to buy that book, buy it on my website, sidwalker.com. I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes. But that's my best-selling book, and it's been around the longest as well. But that's a book on how to get to the feeling level in the interview, and it's a lot of what we're talking about. But this is one of the key points of that book is you've got to get people to verbalize. If you want to increase your closing ratio, you've got to get people to verbalize what's important and why. It sounds so simple, but you'd be amazed at how many people don't do this very well. It's because I got magic happens. I mean, it is magical. Actually, I've got a slide. I got another slide. Let's see if we can go to that. Another handout. But let's talk about this a little bit more. Because there's a tendency with, especially guys being more analytical, there's a tendency to think that if you know the answer to the question, why would you ask it? But probably one of the most important things you can do is ask the most obvious questions, because what it does is it causes people then to say, or what's important to them and why, or whatever the question is. The more you can get people to say, the more commitment is going to happen. When people verbalize things, that's where they commit. And I'll give you some questions to ask here in a second. But that's such a big thing, and I've had people get really good at this, and then they stop doing it. My whole system, which is on the website, Selling Without Wrestling, is being really based on. This is Dale Carnegie. It's been around for 100 years. They call it the dominant buying motive in Dale Carnegie. That's what's the most important thing here, and why is that important? And you've got to get people to verbalize that. And what you'll find is you'll go out and do a great interview, and you'll get everything but that. You won't get people to verbalize actually what's the most important thing and why is that important. You'll think you know, but that'll be your biggest mistake, and that will cut your closing ratio in half. Because remember how you set up the initial interview with people in terms of being a trusted advisor, using the opening language. To start to demonstrate that you're on their side, and then to make sure that you're working with people with chemistry. Those are the three main paradigm shifts. And then this is I guess that was three, maybe that was two, but this is the other one, which is to get people to verbalize what's important and why, because that's where they commit. And the only thing I do on closing on my website, check it out. It's under supplemental training, which is the third button over. It's 27 minutes. And it just talks about what you do in a closing situation. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that before we're done here. But that's coming up. All right. Oh, I know. I want to show you. Let me, pardon my fooling around here, but let me see if I can show you that. I'm going to try to get out of this guy. I'm going to escape. I want to go here. All right. So far, so good. Let's go here. And I would do one to getting more commitment. Okay. All right, that's working. So this is some questions you can ask, and so you've got this as a handout, so download it. Number one, what would you say is most important at this point in your life? Could be after an interview. Out of the things we've talked about today, Bob and Mary, what would be most important? You can rank them if you want. Write them down. And one of my favorite questions, a lot of people say blank is important. Why is that important to you? A lot of people say retirement's important. Why is that important to you? A lot of people say education is important. Whatever it is, trust. Could be a plan you understand. Could be putting your interests first. Those are all questions I like in the beginning. Get people to say, if you had to pick one of those, what would be most important? And then when they pick, let's say they pick trust. A lot of people say trust is important. Why is that important to you? That gets people to verbalize what's important and why it's important. And then you can ask question 3 there. If it feels right, if it's appropriate, ask them again. Why is that important? Tell me more about why that's important to you. Tell me more about why you feel that way. Those are 2 very powerful combinations. You could ask those many times in an interview. The fourth question gets people out into the future. I got a good buddy who's a car dealer, one of the biggest in the country, actually. He told me years ago I sold cars for a short period of time. It was fun, but it wasn't quite my thing. But he said, you got to get people riding in the car. If you're selling intangible stuff that's a piece of paper, you've got to make it real. So one of the ways you make it real is you project people out into the future. So Bob and Mary, if we could put together a program that gave you so that you had somebody that you could trust, because that's what they said they wanted, and if you had somebody you would trust, then you would feel like you were going to reach your goals, or that you were going to increase the likelihood that you would reach their goals. That would be exactly their language. And then I would say, so if you could have those 2 things, how would that help you in the long run? Get them out into the future. Get them talking about the future. And some people, some people will have lots of answers there. Some don't. That's okay. You ask for more. Try to probe a little bit. Ask more questions. Tell me more about that. Where do you want to be in 10 years? When do you want to be in 20? Depending on how old they are. Tell me more about what you want to have. Get them to talk about some details. Because the more they express what they want, the more feelings there are going to be there. Then you can see my question 5. Can you get a sense of what it'd be like to have that? After they've told you a whole bunch of stuff they want, can you get a sense of what it'd be like to have that? Question number 6, is that an important feeling for you to have? And then one of my favorites, number 7, are you willing to do whatever it takes to within reason to get that goal, reach that goal? Those create commitment. In other words, you're getting people to verbalize what's important, and then you're putting some icing on the cake. One of my favorite questions is, I just came up with this a couple of years ago. It's not on here, but it's, is there a word or a phrase that would describe what it would feel like to have these things you want? Is there a word or a phrase that would describe these things that you want? Because people will say security or confidence or I don't know, whatever it happens to be. And then that one word or that phrase becomes the most important part of the whole interview. Because if you don't get to see these people for 6 weeks, you start with that. Last time we talked, you said you wanted this, and you want this. And probably most important, you want the peace of mind that you have knowing you've got a plan to accomplish these things. So there's a lot of interview stuff on my website. It's called the Quick Connection Track. There's a webinar on that. I took out the commercial, so it's all content. It's on the supplemental training. I think it's called Quick Connection Track Update. Check that out. There's a handout in the handout archives. There's an extensive handout on the language that I like to use in the initial interview. It's all pre-fact finder. To me, to start out with a fact finder is ridiculous. You've got to connect with people. You've got to share some values. You've got to basically get them involved and get them talking and demonstrate that you're on their side. So that's what the Quick Connection Track is on the website. Check that out if you're not already good at that. They're still teaching people to go out and do a fact finder and ask a couple feeling-oriented questions in the process. That's a joke, compared to what I'm talking about. And these questions, they're all kind of, you sprinkle them in wherever they feel right. Usually most of these are going to happen at the end of a kind of an initial session. But they could be, they can happen anytime. If you're going back and seeing clients, you still ask these questions. If you haven't seen them in a year, what's important? Why is that important? Has anything changed? Remind me again. How is that going to help you in the long run? Is that something that really feels right to you? Is there a thought or a phrase that would describe, how you feel about that, and what it would be like to have that? All right. So anyway, you've got that piece. Play around with that. Experiment. If I can get people to go out and try new things, that's always a big challenge as a coach. That's when magic happens. Because you go out and try. If you go out and try something and it works, you go, okay, I'm going to do that again. All right. Let's see if I can luck out and this works. Hot dog. All right. All right. So let's see. Let's talk about the. There we go. The power of what feels intuitively right. I wrote a book on intuition called Trust Your Gut. That was my first book. I actually wrote it in the late 80s. And then I kind of updated it in 2004. I think I put a new cover on it. But, that's really on, the book talks about, that's my first book on intuition. I've written 7 now. And, a couple of those are a lot more stuff on intuition. But the main thing to realize is you've got really 2 parts of the brain working together most of the time, the analytical and the intuitive. They're very different. They're almost total opposite. The analytical is a one step at a time kind of a plotter. That's our academic system. It's very ego-oriented, actually. The ego creates the academic system. It likes control. It likes things that are observable and provable. In other words, to the ego, if it doesn't exist in the 5 senses, it doesn't exist. The ego hates things that are unknown or abstract. The more real, the better. So the ego and the analytical get together, and that's a lot of what our world is, that combination. The ego is trying to survive, trying to use linear logic to figure everything out and control it. Whereas the intuition, very different part of the brain, and we see it mostly in sports or anything where anything you're doing anything complicated. We watch sports on TV, but you can't be good in sports and not be intuitive. In fact, those are some of my most successful clients, are retired professional athletes. Because once I show them that being intuitive is the best way to do this business, they go to town. They make a fortune. But nobody usually tells them that. I usually end up being the one. Most everybody else is trying to teach them all kinds of step-by-step stuff, and they don't relate to it. If they're a professional athlete, they learn to trust their intuitive instincts. That's their strength. And then people start telling them they got to do something else, think about things, and learn a system. Doesn't work. So there's some conflict in there because the analytical part is based on having proof that everything you do is going to work logically. The intuitive part of your brain processes millions of pieces of information per second and gives you an answer. Go left, go right, say this. There is no justification for doing it. So you have to develop a leap of faith to trust your intuitive instincts. And that's why it's harder. Your ego basically says, oh, ignore that intuition. Those are fleeting thoughts. That's a who cares. Go with the system. Whereas if the more you trust your intuitive instincts, which is 10,000 times smarter, because it's operating from a database that's 10,000 times bigger, but you don't get to see the process. You don't get to see how your intuition came up with the answer. You just have to trust it. One of the most important things I've told my clients to do over the years, create a log of all the times you have trusted your intuitive instincts. Because your ego will try to erase that as fast as it happened. Your intuition is brilliant. You will come up with, even your mistakes work. Your intuition is so smart. But again, most people don't do that naturally, and your ego is going to try to erase those experiences as quickly as possible. If I ask you, do you remember trusting your intuitive instincts? Some of you probably say, yeah. Can you think of one? That would be hard for most people because your intuition doesn't want you to know that you're that powerful or that you have access to that kind of intelligence. So it erases that stuff, not totally, but it somehow clouds it up so you forget about it. So I've kept a log probably for 20 years of the times I've trusted my intuitive instincts. Let me tell you, it is amazing when you keep a log. You realize how smart that part of your brain is. And that's what gives you more guts to do it. Because the more experiences you have where you've trusted your intuitive instincts and it's worked somehow, a lot of times in ways you never would have imagined, now you got proof. Now you got something to fight the ego with. Because your ego is never going to want to do that. That's what my new book's about, Living in the Zone. It's about basically how to learn to ignore your ego and become an intuitive spirit and actually increase your intelligence by about 100 times. So that was a fun book to write. And I've just had major breakthroughs in that area in the last couple of years. So I'm kind of wandering around this topic of intuition, analysis. When I used to speak a lot, I would say, it needs to be a teamwork. You need both. Because if you're all intuitive, you have a tremendous sense of timing and direction, but you may have trouble getting things done. If you're all analytical, you can be really good at getting things done, but you may be doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. That's probably more where most people are. So you need both. They're designed to be a team, not to be in competition with each other. But the ego gets there and makes it a competition. Which, we don't have enough time to get into that today, but just remember that, in other words, if you're being intuitive, your intuition will tell you when it's time to analyze. And analysis is a friend of intuition. It's not the opposite. It's not the enemy. So you got the other way to say it is your analytical mind is like a magnifying glass and your intuition is like Google Maps. If you're going to take a trip across country, you'd want both. But most people are going through life looking through the magnifying glass and wondering why they're struggling. Because if you have Google Maps, it's going to save you a lot of going down a lot of roads, but a lot of dead ends. I wish I could have some of that time back. All right. So what I'm leading up to here is that one of the most important questions you ask people when in a closing situation is, all right, we know this makes sense. We've talked about this from every way you can imagine. The real question is, Bob and Mary, does this feel right? Most powerful thing you can ask people. Women will get this the quickest. The women will say, if the woman says yes, it's a done deal. And they're usually quicker because they have greater access to it. Guys can be very intuitive, but it's usually a little different. I find women sometimes are very sensitive to what's going on with other people, but my intuition, which is highly tuned, if you put a whole bunch of furniture out in the front yard, I can tell you whether it's going to fit in the truck in 2 seconds. That's intuition, but that's different. So everybody's got different accesses there in terms of, we've all got intuition, you're born with it, and we're all intuitive as kids. So it's not anything you need to learn. Mostly what you need to do is get the ego out of the way so you can hear it. They call it the still small voice for a reason. It's very quiet, it's very subtle. And if your ego's chattering away, you don't hear it. So that's another reason to learn how to ignore the ego and give more attention to your intuitive, still small voice, let's call it. But the key here, and again, listen to that piece, that my 27 minutes on closing, because one of the most important questions asked is, does this feel right? And if people say yes, that means they bought. Basically, they're going to buy it, and it's okay if they want to sleep on it. If you're a relationship builder, you don't make people sign the paper right then. If they're not comfortable doing that. Your first question is, does it feel right? And then you got to find out if there's anything that doesn't feel right and fix that. Because if they say it feels right, they're going to buy it. And then if they want to sleep on it, that's fine. So then your next question is, when do you want to make a decision by? And then don't say anything. Let them decide. Because they will say, call me tomorrow, call me Friday. A lot of people just want to sleep and see if they feel the same way tomorrow as they do right now. They don't want buyer's remorse. Whereas if you're a client controller, everybody's got buyer's remorse. Because you're talking people into doing stuff. And you want people to buy something because they want it. It's right for them. That's why, my average client's probably got better than a 90% closing ratio that I've spent, a bunch of time with on this stuff. Because that sounds high, but the reality is, if you're helping people figure out exactly what they want to do, why wouldn't they do it? That's a different job than the one we were all trained to do, which is pitch and close. Help people figure out exactly what to do, what they want to do. Most of them are going to buy. I guarantee it. All right. And you'll get a lot of grief from the client controllers. One of my favorite things to do, if I know I got a client controller, I say, well, I could double your income. And they go, well, yeah? How are you going to do that? I say, you're not going to like it. And they'll say, what do you mean? I say, all right, there's one condition. I can help you double your income with one condition, and you got to agree to it. And they go, what's that? I go, you got to let go of controlling your clients. Oh, I couldn't do that. All right. Let's see. Did I miss a slide? Somebody said, what about slide 9? I don't think so. Oh, you're right. There's no 9. Sorry. I think it was a double. I just deleted it. So somebody noticed there was a slide missing. All right. So you got my pitch on intuition. I'll give you 2 other questions because these are powerful. When I'm working with the client and then I'm trying to get them away from the ego orientation to being more intuitive, I'll ask them to start asking themselves once an hour throughout the day 2 questions. 1, what does it feel like it's time to do now? What does it feel like it's time to do now? And get that exactly right. It's not what should I do now. It's not what It's what does it feel like it's time to do now. That's not an analytical question. Your analytical mind won't come over the answer for that. It'll tap into the right brain. The other question is, who does it feel like it's time to call now? Who does it feel like it's time to call now? So what does it feel like it's time to do now? Who does it feel like it's time to call now? If somebody pops in your head or something pops into your brain to go do it. Try it out. Test it out. You remember, your intuition's 10,000 times smarter than your intellect, but it doesn't give you the reasons why it wants to do things. It just tells you what to do. It'll say, call Bob Jones. You call Bob, I'll guarantee you 50% of the time you'll hear something like, glad you called, just thinking about you. There's a whole lot more to life than we understand, especially when you're looking through the prism of the ego/analytical mind. It's really limited, because it doesn't believe in anything beyond what's observable and provable, which is most of life is not observable and provable, really. That's a small part. All right, we're coming up on 50 minutes here, so I want to try to honor my time. So let me give you the last slide here. Getting more commitment, we did that. Okay, so at this point, be sure to go and opt in and Selling Without Wrestling. That's my $10,000 website for free. All my books are on sidwalker.com. They'll all take you to Amazon. The only book that's not on Amazon is How to Double Your Sales. If you want to order that, just order it. It'll be on my shopping cart, and then I'll send it out from my place here. But the other books will all be on Amazon. And then if you are interested in talking about coaching, I've been offering a 30-minute free session with anybody. I get a lot done in 30 minutes. But if that's something that's interesting, it's a way for us to get to know each other a little bit and, pick a topic that's bugging you or something you want to change. I'm good at that stuff. I'm as quick as anybody at this. I mean, I keep shrinking my program. It's not good for my income, but, I used to do a 1-year program, then I took it down to 6 months. I'm down to 90 days for most people. In terms of, in 3 months, I can change people's, career, basically. So if you want to talk about coaching, email me. call me directly, and we'll let's figure out a time or set up. I've got a calendar link too you can use. Let's figure out a time to do that, and take me up on my offer here and put me to the test. All right, so I think I covered it all. I think we're coming up on 50 minutes. I'm always amazed how that works. And we had a great crowd today. Lots of familiar names I can see on there, and lots of new people. So thanks everybody for attending. And take one or two of these ideas, go try it out. That's the key. Go. That's the biggest test. Don't let your ego talk you out of trying new things, because that's what your ego does. Your ego is going to try to keep everything the same, no matter what. Even if it doesn't work, your ego wants to keep everything the same. It's unbelievable. Buy my new book, Living in the Zone. You want to learn about how the ego's in your way and how to shut that down. This is the first book. Living in the Zone is the first book that I've written that's not for the general public. It's for my clients. So if you like you like my style, and you like what I'm talking about, it's a profound book. It's only 100 pages, 120 pages, and but there's a lot there, and it's actually so simple it's embarrassing. That would be my experience of what I've discovered in the last couple of years. Once you see what the ego does and how easy it is, in other words, your ego is brilliant. It's the source of all negativity. It's the source of all your barriers, and is brilliant at what it does. It never sleeps. You can't outsmart it. You can't negotiate with it. The beauty of it is you can ignore it. If you learn to ignore your ego, your life will change for the better. Guaranteed. All right. Thanks, everybody. That's my sermon for the day here. Call me, email me if you got questions that didn't get answered. I'm, very open for that because I'm not doing a Q&A, and I'm going to start doing more webinars again. I took a year off here. Actually, I think I've only done 3 webinars in 3 years, but I'm going to start doing them probably at least every other month, maybe monthly. So watch for new topics. All right. Have a great day, and let me know. Let me know if some of this stuff works for you. All right.